Welcome to Moonlit Romantic, your place for quiet nights and tender stories that slow the heart and soften the breath. Tonight's story is Fixing Us. When Renovation host Savannah Cole arrives in the small town of Willow Creek, she expects crumbling porches, sagging beams, and a season's worth of long work days. What she doesn't expect is Noah Blake, a quiet carpenter whose hands repair more than wood and whose silences hold truths she isn't ready to face. In the creak of old steps, in the glow of lantern light, and in the company of a man who refuses the spotlight, Savannah will learn that some things are harder than fixing a house, like fixing a heart that has forgotten how to stay. So settle in, let the night come gently, and let the story begin. Chapter 1. A town with peeling paint. Savannah Cole had driven through plenty of towns where shingles curled like old pages, and porch rails leaned as if they were whispering secrets to the grass. Willow Creek was different. It did not look abandoned so much as paused, like a favorite song waiting for the next verse. Storefronts along the square wore hand-painted signs. A bakery window held a pyramid of golden biscuits beside a card that read, "Still warm, come in." The barber's striped pole turned with the unhurried dignity of a grandfather clock. Even the antique shop, an old brick with a slight sag to its knees, stood open as if memory itself had propped the door. Her producer, Layla, sat shotgun with a tablet and an expression that said she was already calculating camera angles and possible disasters. If charm were currency, this place would be rich, Lila said. But do we think they will actually let us film here? They will, Savannah answered, easing the SUV toward the square's gravel lot. They just do not know it yet. She stepped out into air that smelled faintly of honeysuckle, cut grass, and sawdust. That last scent tugged at a very old place inside her, a summer of childhood where she had watched her grandfather shave curls from pine until the board gleamed. She shook the feeling off lightly. Nostalgia was for after an episode wrapped, and crossed to the sidewalk with purpose. Their first feature for the new season of Renovate It Right was the Whitaker Cottage, a lemon yellow house tucked behind a lilac hedge on a quiet street off the square. She had fallen a little in love with it over a call with Mrs. Whitaker, a widow with a bright voice and a list of repairs she recited with equal parts apology and hope. Sagging porch steps, tired plumbing, a roof that sighed in hard rain. Savannah had promised transformation. It was her favorite word, the one that made strangers cry at reveals and sponsors sign checks. The cottage appeared exactly as described. Sunny paint faded to butter, shutters gone chalky with weather, porch boards soft, where feet had chosen the same path for decades. On the steps knelt a man with a hammer and a pocket full of nails. He wore a plain gray shirt and jeans, the color of river stones, and he worked with the quiet attention of someone who listens as much as he fixes. "Excuse me," Savannah called, stepping through dappled light toward the porch. "Can I help you with anything?" He looked up. His eyes were the clear brown of old walnut. A pale scar nicked one eyebrow, and his expression held the calm that comes from knowing exactly what a board needs. Just helping out, he said, voice low, warm, unhurried. Mrs. Whitaker should not have to step on rotten wood. I am Savannah Cole, she said, offering a smile she knew read as friendly on camera and reassuring in person. We are here to renovate the cottage for the show. He sat back on his heels, considered her a beat, then reached for another nail. Noah Blake. Well, Noah Blake, she said, amused despite herself. You are going to make my job harder. One eyebrow tipped. How is that? Because the cameras are going to love you, she said. And I do not suppose you are interested in being on television. No, ma'am, he said, not unkindly. He sank the nail with a clean, sure strike. I am interested in steps that do not give way. From inside came the soft shuffle of slippers. Mrs. Whitaker opened the door with a smile that belonged to a woman who remembered everyone's cookie preference and nobody's sins. Savannah, dear, you made it. And Noah, you stubborn angel, you said you would only replace the worst board. Turned out there were several worst boards, he said dryly, standing and wiping his palms on a rag. Savannah laughed. That is how porches go. Mrs. Whitaker ushered Savannah inside for a tour of dim rooms that smelled like lemon oil and old paper. The floors creaked cheerfully. The kitchen sink rattled its old bones when the tap opened, then coughed up water the color of weak tea. In the back bedroom, morning light arrived through lace curtains and landed on a quilt patched with violets. Savannah saw it all as blueprints and line items, and the joy that would widen Mrs. Whitaker's eyes on reveal day. Back on the porch, Noah had nearly finished the steps. The new boards sat flush and smooth, their grain like topographic lines of a quiet landscape. Savannah leaned on the rail. Your work is beautiful. Thank you, he said simply. I could really use a carpenter who knows what he is doing, she went on. Regular segment, a few on-camera how-tos. Nothing flashy. No, thank you, he replied. Fitting the last board. I do not need a spotlight to do good work. Savannah crossed her arms, studying him. She had dealt with divas and cynics and sweet talkers. This was something else. This was a man who meant his no and did not leave anger in it. What if it is not about a spotlight, she said, but about helping your neighbors? We can get better materials donated, faster permits, more hands. You on camera would help me fight those fights. He stood, met her gaze, and she felt the steadiness of him, as if it were a hand at the small of her back, keeping her upright. I already help my neighbors, he said. I do not need a microphone to carry lumber. Leela trotted up the walk with a clipboard and the glint in her eye that meant she smelled a story. Savvy, the light in the living room is magic. Also, the church down the street asked if we would look at their steps and, oh, hello. She took in Noah with a producer's practiced glance. You must be the local miracle worker. Just Noah, he said, and Savannah watched him deflect the attention with gentle economy. As Leela peppered him with questions about timelines and trim profiles, he found small ways to step aside, answering yes, but never offering more than needed, never opening the door enough for a camera to wedge in. When he left a few minutes later, tool belt low on his hips, Savannah tracked the line of his shoulders and felt an entirely unprofessional warmth unfurl in her chest. She tamped it down with a briskness that had served her well in cities and construction yards alike. "He is perfect," Lila whispered, eyes wide. "A brooding carpenter who can actually build? Ratings mana." "He said no," Savannah replied. "People say no to you exactly once," Lila said. "Then you show them what yes can do." Savannah watched Noah turn the corner at the end of the street and disappear behind a row of crepe myrtles in faded pink. "I do not think he is a ratings problem," she said softly. "I think he is a peace problem." Mrs. Whitaker patted Savannah's arm with a kindness that assumed she had already won whatever battle she was about to fight. "Noah's been here his whole life," she said. "He stays out of the way and in the middle of everything at the same time. People trust him. He will come around if it feels right. If it does not, do not push. Some hearts do not like to be cornered." Savannah swallowed a smile. Duly noted. That evening, after a day of measurements and photos, and the 100 small conversations that make a renovation move, Savannah walked alone to the old church at the edge of the square. The steps needed help. Their soft boards had learned to sigh under Sunday shoes, but the white clapboard still gleamed despite heat and years. She stood there in the long gold of late light and listened to Willow Creek breathe. Somewhere a dog barked once and thought better of it. A bicycle ticked past. On the far side of the square, a fiddle climbed up a tune and then laughed at itself. She thought of the life she had been living, cities and flights and tight schedules, dinners, eaten standing up with a tablet balanced against a plywood wall. She loved the work. She loved the yes on a homeowner's face when she walked them through a new kitchen. But there had been less and less room for quiet, less and less room for anything that did not fit on a call sheet. Behind her, boots scuffed softly. She turned to find Noah at the base of the steps, a toolbox in one hand, and that same spare calm in his eyes. "Mrs. Whitaker called me about these," he said. "I said I would take a look." Savannah gestured toward the boards. "They have learned bad habits." He crouched, pressed fingers to the grain as if feeling for a pulse. "They are tired. Tired is honest." "You are not on camera," she blurted, and felt heat rise in her cheeks. He huffed a small, almost secret laugh. "I noticed." They stood in silence a while, the kind that stops being silence once you get used to the company. At last he said, "Ms. Cole." "Savannah," she corrected gently. "Savannah," he repeated, like a carpenter testing a syllable for fit. "You do not have to prove anything to this town. If you mean to help, it will show." "I do mean to," she said. "But I also need to make a show. That is the part that makes people nervous." "Maybe you make a smaller show," he suggested. "Enough story to pay for lumber. Not so much that the town forgets itself." She considered that, surprised by how possible it sounded when he said it. "Would you help me thread that needle?" He straightened, looked at the church doors, then at her. "One condition," he said. "No meddling in my life outside the worksite." She nodded before she let herself think. "Deal." He held her gaze a heartbeat longer, as if checking the strength of a joint, then offered his hand. It was warm and rough and far too steady for the way her pulse skipped. She shook it anyway. "See you in the morning," he said, and left her on the steps with the evening and a promise that felt as fragile and as durable as new wood. She walked back to the cottage in the soft pink-edged dusk, the square settling into lamplight. Layla waved from a picnic table, piled with clipboards and takeout containers. "Well?" Savannah sat, let her shoulders loosen, and smiled into her paper cup of sweet tea. "We have a carpenter," she said, "and a condition." "Please tell me." "The condition is not no meddling," Lila groaned. Savannah took a long sip, tasted lemon and ice and trouble, and decided not to answer that. The night had held the kind of hush that feels like a sheet being turned down. Somewhere out there, a man who preferred sawdust to spotlights had agreed to stand a little nearer the light. She had the sudden, inconvenient thought that she wanted to be careful enough to deserve it. Sleep found her in the motel, with the peeling wallpaper and the bed that squeaked when she breathed too hard. Dreams came wood-scented, a porch reborn, a church awake, a pair of steady hands guiding a board into place. When she stirred just before dawn, she thought she heard a low hum outside, like someone sanding a rough edge smooth. The town was already working. She would be too. Chapter 2. Lights, camera, friction. The crew arrived with the day's first heat, a parade of cases and cords and rolling carts that looked like small, tidy animals following their handlers. Willow Creek watched from storefront doors and shaded benches. Curiosity wore its Sunday best. Skepticism kept its hat on. Savannah walked the Whitaker cottage with her cameraman and director, marking beats in her head. Exterior establishing shot at the lilacs. Host intro at the picket fence, a quick smile to the far lens, and a nod to the near one. Cutaway to Mrs. Whitaker's teary delight. Hands-on demo of the crumbling plumbing. A gentle pan across the kitchen. The kind of shot that would make sponsors imagine their fixtures gleaming in this light. She could do the dance in her sleep, and had on some unfortunate nights, in a desert of airport hotels. Noah arrived during the first setup, early sun turning his hair to something the camera would try to steal. He wore the same unremarkable gray shirt and looked toward the lens as a person might regard a dog that is probably friendly, but could knock over a vase if excited. "Morning," he said to Savannah. He tipped his chin politely at the rest. Leela appeared at his elbow like an apparition conjured by ratings. "You must be Noah. Bless you for agreeing. America is going to..." He lifted a palm. Not rude, just firm. "I am here to work." "Of course," Lila said quickly, already recalibrating. Savannah stepped in. "We will keep it simple," she said. "If I am talking to camera, you do not have to. We will pick up your hands for inserts, a few over the shoulders when you are comfortable. No personal questions, no prying, just the work." Noah studied her, and something eased in his posture as if a clamp had been loosened. "Fine," he said. as long as the work stays true. She heard the unspoken half, and as long as you do, too. They began with porch repairs, which meant Noah did not have to pretend for anyone. Boards came up, nails sang out, joists revealed where time had nibbled, and where moisture had cheated. He moved through it like a hymn, all economy and intention. Savannah narrated in a tone she used only when the cameras were close and the homeowners were listening from the next room. Conversational, encouraging, a little amused. Notice how Noah is checking each joist with a moisture meter, she said, glancing to the side lens. It is important to know which boards are simply old and which are compromised. Replacing what is tired is maintenance. Replacing what is unsafe is respect. Noah shot her a sidelong look that hovered between surprise and approval. She felt it like a stamp in a passport she had not realized she wanted. They broke for water under the lilacs. Mrs. Whitaker brought lemonade in jelly jars and refused to let the assistant carry the tray. I have been walking since before any of you were born, she declared. Do not make me prove it. Noah stood to help anyway, his hand steady under the tray's edge, and Mrs. Whitaker gave him that look older women reserve for men who are humble about their usefulness. That is a good boy, she said, which made the grip guy smother a laugh, and Layla scribble good boy carpenter on her notes with an underline. Tell me about crown profiles, Savannah asked Noah, when the glasses were safely distributed and the director had drifted toward a better angle. He swallowed a sip and tapped the porch post with one finger. In here, keep it simple. The house has been straightforward its whole life. It will not thank us for dressing it up like Sunday when it is Tuesday. She smiled. Function over flash. Honesty over flash, he corrected. He returned to work as the light tilted and Savannah felt unexpectedly at peace. She loved the teaching days, the ones where the camera became a conduit instead of a mirror. She loved the way the crew relaxed when the rhythm took hold. She loved, too, the small ways the town edged closer. 2 teenage boys pretending not to be interested, a pair of grandmothers whispering like sparrows, a dog with dignified eyebrows, claiming a square of shade. After lunch, the director asked for a few shots of Noah explaining how he cut the joints so clean. He hesitated, eyes flicking briefly to Savannah, as if to confirm the rules had not changed. She gave him a tiny nod. He set down the chisel, scrubbed a hand over his jaw, and said, "Sharp tools, patience, a good line, and knowing when to stop fussing." Say more about the line, Savannah coaxed gently. He picked up a scrap and drew a pencil across it in a motion that made the camera lean closer without being told. Wood tells you how it wants to move. If you listen, the line makes itself. Folks mess up by fighting the board's nature. You are here to partner with it, not win. Savannah's chest tightened for a reason that had nothing to do with lumber. She wondered briefly what it would feel like to be partnered with that kind of attention, to be seen the way he saw the grain. She pushed the thought to the edge of her mind, where the wind could cool it. By late afternoon, the porch had a new frame, fresh boards, and a rhythm underfoot that made the whole house look relieved. The crew packed cords, wrapped lenses, and peeled tape. Town kids returned with bicycles and questions about cameras. Mrs. Whitaker insisted everyone take a cookie for the road. "Tomorrow we open the bathroom walls," Savannah told the director, who groaned in theatrical despair. "Plumbing episodes always test the soul." "Plumbing does not care about your soul," Noah observed. "Plumbing has never met mine," Savannah returned, earning herself a rare, quick grin that made her a little dizzy. When the crew had gone and the square fell back into its evening pace, Savannah found Noah at the church steps, measuring worn treads with a tape that had seen its share of summers. The sun lowered itself behind pecans and left the world the color of warm tea. "You held your own today," she said. "I held the boards," he corrected, pulling a pencil from behind his ear. "You did the talking." "You did some," she said, tilting her head. "Sharp tools, patience, knowing when to stop fussing." He slid the pencil back in place. "True things do not need selling." She sat on the bottom step, leaving him room to work. "Thank you for trusting me." "I did not," he said, and the honesty landed without malice. "I trusted the work. You kept your word about the rest." She took the rebuke as the compliment it was. "I will keep doing that." He gave a small, almost imperceptible nod, then added as if to a ledger, "Condition still stands." "No meddling," she repeated, outside the work site. The quiet that followed did not feel like a door closing. It felt like a boundary staked with respect, a fence that keeps the garden safe and the path clear. She was good with boundaries. She also knew how to read a property line and wonder what was growing on the other side. A breeze came off the creek, carrying the faintest edge of rain, though the sky had not decided. Noah gathered his tools. Savannah rose. At the corner where churchyard met sidewalk, their shoulders almost brushed and did not. "Until morning," she said. "Until morning," he replied, and the word felt like a promise the town had made to her and she to it. Chapter 3: Sawdust and Secrets. The next morning began with birdsong that threaded through Savannah's motel curtains before the alarm ever could. She brewed the weak coffee that came with the room, sipped, winced, and promised herself better once the day steadied. Outside, Willow Creek stretched into sunlight, the streets already alive with porch brooms, clattering screen doors, and a milk truck making its slow, dependable route. By the time Savannah arrived at the Whitaker cottage, Noah was already there, crouched by the porch rail, with a plane in his hand. The board sang under his strokes, curls of cedar falling like ribbons to the ground. He looked up at her with that same calm acknowledgement, neither warmth nor distance, just a steady presence. "You are early," she said. "No such thing when wood is waiting," he replied. He brushed the shavings into a neat pile. Savannah smiled despite herself and set her coffee down on the railing. "You know, most people do not start their day with a plane and a stubborn board." "Most people do not live in Willow Creek," he said simply. The crew arrived in a flurry soon after, cameras blinking open like morning eyes, and the day's task unfolded, the bathroom walls, Everyone groaned at the thought of plumbing, but Savannah coaxed the moment into a kind of ritual, turning dread into curiosity for the cameras. Noah, however, approached it with the same composure he had given the porch. "Pipes tell the truth," he said, knocking gently along the wall. "If they are rusted, you will see it. If they are clogged, you will hear it. Water does not lie." Savannah shot the cameraman a look that said, "Please tell me you are catching this poetry." They opened the wall. The pipes were indeed rusted, streaked with orange, that had bled into the studs. Noah touched the metal as if it were a patient, not a problem. "Tired," he murmured, repeating yesterday's word. "But fixable." Hours blurred into the rhythms of demolition. Savannah balanced her hosting voice with real sweat, wielding a crowbar in one hand and banter in the other. Noah cut pipes with methodical care, explaining little but offering more when pressed by her gentle nudges. By late afternoon, the wall was down, the worst pipes removed, and the air smelled of sawdust and iron. The crew packed up, their chatter spilling down the street like loose gravel. Only Noah lingered, cleaning tools in that same deliberate way, as though order itself were another form of kindness. Savannah leaned against the doorway, tired but content. "Do you always work this way?" "What way is that?" "As if the wood and nails have feelings." He gave her a long, steady look. "Everything breaks if you do not respect what it is made of." The words slipped under her skin, quiet and startling. She thought of her own life, fast flights, temporary apartments, relationships that never held because she was always on to the next season. Respecting what something was made of, she was not sure she had given herself the same courtesy. They walked together toward the square, the sun drifting low. At the bakery window, the day's last biscuits glowed under a glass dome. Without thinking, Noah stepped inside, returned with 2 wrapped in brown paper, and handed one to her. "You did not have to." "Hungry work deserves bread," he said. They ate in silence on a bench near the fountain, crumbs scattering to the pigeons. Savannah felt the town, breathing around them, shop doors closing, children laughing in the fading light, the first lamplight spilling across brick. She looked at Noah, biscuit in hand, and wondered what other quiet habits he carried. "Why do you stay here?" she asked softly. "In Willow Creek, I mean. You could be anywhere." His jaw worked once, twice, as though shaping the answer cost him. Finally, he said, "I left once. Did not go well. Some things you only learn by coming back." She wanted to ask more, but the look in his eyes was a fence she did not want to break. Instead, she nodded, letting the quiet settle between them like the dusk itself. When she walked back to the motel later, she carried the faint scent of cedar shavings in her hair and the weight of his words in her chest. Chapter 4. Cracks in the Walls. Rain arrived by morning, soft at first, then steady, turning the square into a watercolor of umbrellas and glistening pavement. The crew groaned about wet cables, but Savannah found herself oddly grateful. Rain forced a slower rhythm. Rain invited introspection. Inside the Whitaker cottage, the sound of drops against the roof was a lullaby over their work. Noah measured new pipes, his sleeves pushed to his elbows, forearms dusted with copper filings. Savannah watched the way he tested each length before cutting, precise and patient. "You make even plumbing look graceful," she teased, leaning against the doorframe. He snorted softly. "Never thought I would hear those words." "Well, there is a first for everything." She meant it lightly, but his eyes flicked to hers, unreadable. For a heartbeat, the air between them felt charged, like the moment before lightning. Then he turned back to the pipe, steady as ever. Mrs. Whitaker shuffled in with tea, her slippers making small clouds of dust. "You two sound good in here," she said cheerfully, "like you have known each other longer than a few days." Savannah felt her cheeks warm. "Work does that," she said quickly. Mrs. Whitaker only smiled, eyes twinkling in a way that suggested she knew more than she let on. By midday, the rain had eased. The crew captured B-roll of droplets sliding down the windows, of Noah tightening a joint with calm precision, of Savannah laughing as a stubborn pipe sprayed a trickle across her shoulder. They would stitch it into a narrative later. Hardship turned into triumph, teamwork sealing the day. But for Savannah, the real story was quieter. It was the way Noah handed her the wrench without being asked, the way he steadied the board as she drilled, the way silence with him was never empty. When the last tool was set down, she joined him on the porch. The rain had left everything washed clean, the square glowing under wet brick and puddled light. "You know," she said, "this porch might be my favorite place in town." "Porches are honest," he replied. "They show how a house greets the world." "Honest seems to be your favorite word," she teased. "Better than pretending." She studied him, the scar by his brow, the steadiness in his shoulders. "You ever pretend, Noah?" He hesitated, long enough that she thought he might not answer. Then quietly, "Once. I thought I could be someone I was not. Left this town to prove it. Came back when the truth caught up." The simplicity of it sank deep. She wanted to ask what had happened, who had been involved, but she saw in his face that tonight was not the night. So she only nodded, offering him the kind of silence that was more companion than void. The church bell rang 7 times across the square. Mrs. Whitaker called them in for stew, her voice warm as the light spilling through her windows. Savannah followed Noah inside, feeling the edges of her world soften, as though the cracks in her own walls were finally letting in air. Chapter 5. When the lights flicker. The air turned sharp by the next evening, crisp with the kind of chill that carried wood smoke and damp earth together. The crew set up lamps inside the Whitaker cottage, their bright halos cutting across the old beams. Savannah guided them through takes, with practiced ease, introducing the repaired plumbing, the new beams, the promise of what the cottage would become. But midway through, the lamps flickered, once, twice, then went dark. The crew groaned, fumbling for flashlights. "Breaker," someone muttered. "This place is older than the square itself." Savannah turned, expecting Noah's calm, and there he was, already moving, lantern in hand, as though power outages were an old friend. He lit the flame, steady and sure, and the room glowed with golden softness. Electric lines out here are temperamental, he explained. Storm last night probably loosened something. The crew decided to wrap early, their voices trailing down the steps, until only Savannah and Noah remained in the cottage, the lantern between them. The silence was intimate, thick but not uncomfortable. She lowered herself to the floor, back against the fresh beam, and he joined her, setting the lantern on an overturned bucket. The shadow stretched across the half-finished walls, turning the space into something hushed, almost sacred. "You always know what to do," she said. "No," he corrected gently. "I only know how to stay still long enough to listen." She tilted her head. Listen to what? Wood, weather, people. His gaze flicked to hers, unguarded for once. "You." Her breath caught. It was not a grand confession, but it was truer than any line she had heard whispered in city lounges or wrapped up in studio edits. "I am not sure people usually listen to me," she said quietly. "I think you are used to being heard, not listened," he answered. "There is a difference." The lantern hummed softly, its flame bending with a faint draft. Savannah wrapped her arms around her knees, warmth pooling in her chest where his words had landed. After a while, she asked, "Why did you really come back? You said you left once." Noah leaned against the wall, eyes on the shadows. "I thought I could build a life somewhere bigger. Took a job in a city, construction, high-rises. Thought that kind of building meant more. But I lost myself in the noise. When my father passed, I came home. Realized I had been chasing a life that did not fit." His voice softened, almost apologetic. "And I let someone down along the way. Someone who wanted me to stay gone." The weight in his tone told her not to press further, not tonight. So she let the silence stretch, offering him the same listening he had given her. After a long while, he asked, "And you, Savannah? What makes you run so fast?" Her laugh was gentle but rueful. "Maybe I am afraid if I stop moving, people will realize I do not know what I am doing. That this whole career is just me convincing others I have all the answers." "You do not need all the answers," he said. "You just need the right questions." The words nestled into her, simple and steady, the way only Noah could make them. The lantern sputtered once, then steadied, and in that quiet room, half built and half lit, Savannah felt something shift, like the foundation of a house settling, making room for the walls to rise. Chapter 6. The House We Build. The final week in Willow Creek arrived with morning light so clear it felt like glass. The Whitaker cottage stood transformed, porch rails sanded smooth, beam strong, plumbing gleaming behind fresh plaster. The crew filmed the reveal. Neighbors gathered, and Mrs. Whitaker wept into her apron as Savannah guided her through each finished room. "Feels like home again," the woman whispered, her hands pressed to the smooth wall. Savannah smiled, pride glowing in her chest. The cameras captured every angle, every teary smile. This was the part of the show she had always loved, when walls told stories again, When the last shot wrapped, the crew cheered, packed, and promised drinks at the tavern. Savannah lingered by the porch, the town square stretching quiet in the afternoon sun. She found Noah there, setting his tools into their box, each one placed with reverence. "So," she said softly, "this is goodbye." He looked up, eyes steady but unreadable. "Is it?" The question hung between them. She thought of her next season, contracts waiting in the city, flights already booked. She thought of Willow Creek, its gentle rhythm, its sawdust mornings and lantern-lit nights. And she thought of Noah, whose silences spoke louder than any script. "I do not know how to slow down," she admitted. "You do not have to," he replied. "You only have to decide if where you are running matters." Her throat tightened. "And if I do not leave?" His jaw worked once, as if he had not dared imagine it until now. "Then maybe," he said quietly, "we build something that lasts, together." The simplicity of it unraveled her. There were no grand declarations, no sweeping promises, just an invitation, as steady as the beams he raised. She stepped closer, the scent of cedar and earth wrapping around her. For the first time in years, she did not feel the tug of the next project, the next deadline. She felt present, rooted. "I think," she whispered, "that might be the bravest renovation of all." Noah's lips curved, the smallest, truest smile. He reached for her hand, calloused and warm, and she let her fingers intertwine with his. The crew's laughter echoed faint from the square, the tavern door swinging shut. But here, on the porch of a cottage reborn, there was only the two of them. Noah squeezed her hand gently. "Welcome home, Savannah." And as the afternoon light spilled golden across Willow Creek, she realized that for once she was not chasing a story. She was living one. Thank you for listening to Moonlit Romantic. In Willow Creek, Savannah found more than a finished cottage. She found a rhythm, a place to belong, and a man who taught her that the truest work of all is building something that lasts. If fixing us touched your heart tonight, please like, subscribe, and share it with someone who believes love is the most enduring renovation of all. Until we meet again, sleep softly, dream deeply, and remember, the strongest foundations are built with trust, patience, and love.